everybody, welcome to Monday. It's great to have you here. This is day one of a very, very big case. P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Puff Diddy, Sean Combs, whatever you call him. The judge calls him Sean Combs. And that's what the docket will call him. And that's how he's being tried. But this is how he looked. And yes, I'm sorry about the drawings. We're still in the 1600s when it comes to court. At least federal court, because they don't allow cameras, but they do allow artists, and this is the best we can do. But let me do some context for you. Diddy is now looking really old, I have to say. He's like completely gray, and his goatee is completely gray, and he's thinner and wearing like the same clothes that Luigi Mangione wore in federal court, but that's probably by design, because they've got the same lawyers. You don't want to look like a sex-crazed wild man if you are up for sex trafficking and all sorts of sexy charges, right? So a list of celebrities kind of started to come out in court. Real quick, here's just a soup song. Kanye West, Michael Jordan, Mike Myers, Kid Cudi, Michelle Williams, and that's, like I said, just a few. Many more. But why? And what kind of questions did they embarrass these jurors with? So much so that the judge said, if you're too embarrassed to answer the questions in open court, just come up to the bench and whisper them to me with the lawyers present. Yeah, it's a sexy trial, folks. And so the voir dire of the jurors, jury selection, very sexy. I've got the details for you in a minute. Then also, with regard to Bryan Kohberger, Idaho murders. You don't need a motive, believe it or not, if you're a prosecutor trying to prove a case. It's weird, I know. You want to answer the question, why, right? But you don't have to. The only thing is there's a report out today suggesting there was a motive and that prosecutors are planning to use it. And that the motive for this alleged killer was trying to impress a woman. Not just any woman, a woman who used to be his teacher. But that teacher says, huh? Not so fast. So now we're wondering all about the report. I've got all of that coming in just a moment, but then also this incredible case from 2013. A lawyer is accused of killing his client because he wasn't ready for court. You heard me. It was a divorce case. This lawyer had a female client and was woefully behind, and the judge wasn't having any of it. So prosecutors say he just killed her. He just lured her to his office and then jumped out of the bushes. The problem is it's taken over a decade to get to justice, but they think they've got him now. So was it really him? Would a lawyer really do that? Well, wait till you hear about the lawyer and his background. P.S. He's disbarred, but that's all I'm telling you. There's a lot more to it where that came from. Let me start here, though. How do you feel about threesomes? Yeah, I'm going there. How do you feel about paying for sex? Have you ever been molested? Have you ever molested someone else? Have you ever had to answer a question like this in front of a room full of strangers? How about multiple uncomfortable questions like this? Because a few dozen New Yorkers had that humiliating experience just today, all because their number was up. They got summoned for jury duty, and the date on their summons was day one of P. Diddy's sex trafficking and racketeering trial. And because the subject matter in his federal case involves freak-offs and baby oil and stuff like that, these jurors had to be checked, and then checked and checked again. And the questions were super personal. So personal, in fact, that prospective jurors were told if they felt too awkward to, say their answers out loud in that public courtroom in front of everybody and all the press, they could just come on up to the bench and answer the judge and the lawyers in private. Now that, my friends, is what you call a trial. For his part, Sean Diddy Combs stayed mostly quiet while all those questions were being asked and all those people were blushing. He was dressed in a relatively drab navy crew neck sweater with a white collared shirt and glasses. His hair is almost entirely gray now. He had like a fade, freshly cut by the barber in the prison. His goatee is also completely gray. He does not in the least look like the Diddy that we're used to seeing, which, by the way, we would have been seeing tonight were he not in jail, like down the street at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where this is going on. Tonight is the biggest fashion night of the year. It is the kookier than kooky Met Gala, where they just do this stuff. They wear these outfits, and every year it just gets more and more crazy, like super wild and super crazy. It's all about costumes. It's about raising money for. But look, that was Diddy in better days, dressed like, wow. He used to hold court at this event, y'all. Like, Diddy was a triple A-lister. And if they had a quadruple A-lister, he'd be that too, but not tonight. This whole week for Diddy is set aside for jury selection in his federal case. And candidates who passed through the first cut, the written questionnaire, also, they filed into court one by one so that the judge could ask a bunch of very cringy questions submitted by both sides. So one woman was dismissed for saying the hotel surveillance video that allegedly shows Diddy attacking his then girlfriend, Cassie, quote, could be damning evidence, end quote. Another juror was struck from the jury because a family member had gone through something similar to the allegations in Diddy's case. And by day's end, only 19 candidates were kept in the pool, including a woman who in the past had given a thumbs up to an online joke about the 1,000 bottles of baby oil that the feds say they found in Diddy's mansions. Would-be jurors also saw a list of well-known names that may come up at trial, including Michael B. Jordan, Mike Myers, Kid Cudi, Michelle Williams, Dallas Austin, and Cassie Ventura, that alleged hotel attack victim whose civil suit opened the floodgates for this very criminal trial. I want to be crystal clear here, folks, like crystal clear. Not one of the people on your screen right now, or any of the people who are going to be listed, all the famous people, etc., not one of them is accused of anything. It is not a crime to be a friend of Puff's. Not a crime to be Diddy's pal. It is also not a crime to attend one of Diddy's epic parties, if in fact any of those people even did. But the whole wide world was at these parties. They were so famous, People magazine covered the white parties. It was like the toast of the Hamptons if you got an invitation to be at Diddy's parties. And pretty much anybody who was anybody was at a Diddy party at some point. I am joined now by NewsNation's national correspondent Caitlin Becker, who's live outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. So you drew the I don't know how we call it, short straw or long straw. It's a great trial, but it's a real embarrassing one if you have to talk about it publicly. Look at you, you're already blushing. So let's talk about the first bombshell, Caitlin, the list of celebrities. I named a few, but how did we get these names? What's the context of the names coming up in jury selection? Take it from there.
You know, Ashleigh, it's interesting. They didn't really give the context of why they were asking these questions, but it was a couple dozen of these celebrity names all listed. And the jurors were questioned about whether or not they knew who they were. But what's interesting is it wasn't just celebrities. A few of Diddy's children were on the list. There was a choreographer on the list, some lesser known people from Diddy's former MTV reality show Making the Band. That leads me to think that maybe we could be looking at potential jurors, because those people are not potential jurors, potential witnesses. The potential jurors were looking at this. Like, is this a potential witness list? Could we be seeing some of these people coming into court? Kid Cudi certainly stood out to me here. He formerly dated Cassie Ventura, and there are accusations of arson in the indictment against Diddy, and Cudi's name isn't used there, but anyone who's covered celebrity news for a long time knows that it's alleged that Diddy and some of his cohorts may have set fire to his car at the time. So we might be looking at witnesses here, Ash.
Wow, I can't imagine all these famous faces parading through a Diddy courtroom. It's the last place any of them, is going to want to be, that's for sure. Nobody wants to be even mentioned, on any kind of list in the press. It's just so toxic, this whole topic. But, okay, I do want to ask you about some of the questions that the defense is asking these jurors and some of the questions that the prosecutors, because they're very different. Defense seems to be focusing on, like, orgies and cheating and all that kind of stuff, which is perfectly legal. And the prosecutors seem to be focusing on questions that pertain to like prostitution, guns, drugs, sex assault. So that's pretty much where I'm seeing this trial go. Am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right here. And all of these things kind of hit one sort of center point there, one meeting bit, where it comes down to how comfortable will these jurors be with the lifestyle that Diddy led. From the defense's side, they want a group of people who are not going to look at multiple sexual partners or hiring prostitutes or these type of freak-offs as being morally reprehensible. They want people who are going to look at this and say, maybe that's not my lifestyle, but I understand that. Where on the prosecution side, they want them to look at it as in more of a conservative tone, look at it on its merits, that they're saying it's not consensual. So you have to understand that there was allegedly drugs and there was a lot of alcohol and there could have been weapons and stuff like that. So where do the jurors land in their personal belief systems about these types of activities? Because not only are they going to learn about them on the stand, but they're going to be seeing them. Video footage of these freak-offs are going to be shown to this jury pool, as well as likely that video of Cassie Ventura being allegedly attacked by Diddy. So how comfortable will these jurors be in their own belief system and with what happened to them perhaps in the past? Were they maybe sexually assaulted? Did they go through any trauma? Those questions were asked today of these jurors to see where they would land on some of these very sensitive topics that are going to be raised throughout this 8-10 week trial.
Well, if they were blushing today, just wait until video evidence of freak-offs is played, because that stuff's going to be, you know, NSFW, not safe for work. Real quick, this is the way I'm used to seeing Diddy on red carpets with, you know, beautiful women at the Met Gala wearing crazy costumes, performing in videos at awards shows, etc. Like, this is the Diddy we all know, but that was not the Diddy that is depicted in those crazy sketches. Look, the sketch artists do the best they can, but for the, you know, consuming public, it is maddening, I say, to see a trial covered in this way in 2025. Take me into the court. What were the observations? What was the description like? Tell me everything about Diddy and his sweater in that courtroom.
You know, you said it at the beginning of this. It gave Luigi Mangione vibes, and that might be by design because they do share attorneys, the Agnifilos, Mark and Karen Agnifilo. It was the same basic style, that collared shirt with the sweater on top. It gives very, for Mangione, it gives very schoolboy. For Diddy, it gave very much a kind of like librarian professor sort of grandpa, which is not how we see this, you know, larger than life rapper. I mean, you're looking at two sketches right here from those two hearings, Mangione on one side, Diddy on the other, and they're basically wearing the same exact outfit. I mean, as you said, he's very gray. He doesn't look the way he did when we're used to seeing him walking red carpets, though I will tell you, Ash, that the amount of press that was here today could have rivaled the Met Gala. There were so many cameras outside, and we don't even catch a glimpse of him, so you get an idea of just how large this case is going to loom. But inside the courtroom, it's not like that. It's really quiet. There were only a handful of journalists allowed in. No one from the public was allowed in for jury selection, and only two family members were there. None of Diddy's children were. He had a cousin who was in there, and then another family member who I didn't recognize. But once trial starts, Ashleigh, I think that will be different. And he does seem to be really impacted by the family members who are in the room with him. They do seem to give him a boost. So come trial, I think that will be a little different.
Caitlin Becker, amazing work and a long day for you. So thanks so much for sticking around for the show. I really appreciate the reporting. And poor Caitlin's going to have to sit through a lot more of that, too. I want to go to one of the sharpest legal minds I know, and that's Joe Tacopina. He's a criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, longtime friend of mine. Joe, since we're talking about the importance of sartorial choices, this is a complete coincidence that I'm dressed like a choir boy, given the nature of some of the testimony and the evidence that we're going to be dealing with in this case. Help me to sort of think through picking the ultimate juror when you know things are going to get juicy and racy and dirty and all the rest.
Look, this is a case where you either want one of two jurors. Jurors are going to be so, as a defense attorney, and let's be real, we want jurors. We could all say we want fair jurors. and honest jurors. We could all say it. That's what we're supposed to want. Let's be real and say we want jurors who are going to be best for our side, right? We want jurors who we think are going to make our chance of winning higher. Both sides want that. Prosecutors want that too. Don't kid yourself. So I think in this case, you wanted the jurors who are enamored with P. Diddy, what he stood for, who he is, where he came from. People who appreciate that he sort of a rags to riches story, if you will, or I'm going to surprise some people with this, very, very smart jurors. And what I mean by that is I've had these cases where people have, perceived guilt before we even pick the jury. And in those cases, of course, if I'm going to trial on the case, I believe I have a defense. And in those cases, I want really smart jurors because I want them to be able to put aside sort of the preconceived public sentiment and the evidence and to focus on what is the real issues in the case and what a reasonable doubt is, because that's really what this case is going to fall on. There's one issue in this case, really, Ashleigh, that this whole, we can talk about freak offs and swingers and this and that. It's one issue, consent. Were these women consenting to be part of this world, these freak offs, the P. Diddy world, or were they not? Were they coerced? Were they coerced? Were they forced against their will? It's just that simple. It's really what you have to, ask yourself, and what this jury is going to be forced to answer. Was this consensual or not?
Let me ask you a question. If this was your client and, P. Diddy, there aren't enough bulbs that are bright enough to depict the power that this guy has just in, being in his presence, he just takes the oxygen out of the room. Would you put him on the stand? Do you think that this guy as a performer, as a masterful performer, would be helpful to your case on the stand? Here's the real honest answer, and if any defense attorney worth their salt say this to you, it is absolutely too early to make that determination. Look, the ASAP Rocky trial we just finished, it was our intention 100% of the way for Rocky to testify in that case. He was going to testify. He was prepared to testify. We had prepped his testimony. By the time we got there, we chose not to put him on the stand because we thought, the case was already in our hands. And putting him on the stand would have delayed the jury getting this case, would have removed this case further from the destruction of their chief witness. Of course, even a truth teller could be made to look like a liar under a skillful cross-examination. And the focus then becomes on him. Once the defendant takes the stand, forget all the damage you've done to the prosecution's witnesses, the reasonable doubts you may have, brought out from the prosecution's witnesses, the inconsistencies, maybe the lies that you've elicited from the prosecution witnesses. That all becomes background noise. What becomes the focal point of the whole trial is the defendant credible? Is he telling the truth or is he lying? If the defendant is seen to be a liar by the jury, game, set, and match. It doesn't matter what damage you cause.
Yep.
So that's
one
why
thing I will
most
say,
defendants do not testify.
He's likable. He's proven billions of dollars over that he's really likable. So, but who knows? You're right. It's really early.
He's
Joe,
but then
you're so
they're going to
great.
play that videotape. They're going to play a videotape, though. So.
Oh, very good point. Yeah, no blue sweater is going to overcome that. Joey Tacopina, will you come back and talk to me about this as the case goes on? I think we're going to be several weeks in this.
Sure, Ashleigh. Absolutely.
Good to have you, as always. Thanks you so much. By the way, folks, I just want to let you know that we reached out to Sean Combs' attorneys today, and we requested a statement from them, but we've not heard back. Not surprising when you're in court. It's very, very busy. Also want to just tell you that my podcast, Drop Dead Serious, I have a full primer on the whole how did we get to this point on day one of this case. So if you want to just check it out, that'll give you all the background, and it'll take you right back to the very beginning. By the way, it's only been 8 months since he was arrested. We are at this case fast, but that primer is there for you at Drop Dead Serious. Switching gears, if there is one thing we all want to know when it comes to the University of Idaho murders, it's the answer to the most vexing question in the case, and that is why? Why would anyone break into a house full of kids they don't even know and stab them to death in their beds? Everyone is reaching for that answer in a case that's been gagged tighter than most cases in history. So is a new report that claims to have solved that puzzle fact Or is it dangerous fiction? That's next. When it comes to getting a murder conviction, motives are like bodies. Very helpful to a case, but not mandatory. Prosecutors convict murder suspects all the time without knowing why the killer did it. And for more than 2 years now, it has looked like the quadruple murders at the University of Idaho may be another case in point. For all the evidence that we've seen in court papers so far, evidence that points to a suspect with the means and the opportunity to commit this horrendous crime, we've seen next to nothing about a motive, an alleged reason as to why Bryan Kohberger, who's charged with this, would want those 4 innocent kids dead in such a violent and bloody way. But now, with Kohberger's trial just 3 months away, there is one reporter who says he thinks he knows what prosecutors are planning to present in the way of motive. His name is Howard Bloom, and his article appears in an online newsletter called Airmail. In it, Bloom suggests that prosecutors think Kohberger went to monstrous and unthinkable extremes to impress a woman. And not just any woman, a woman you have seen on this program many times, Catherine Ramsland. Dr. Ramsland was one of Kohberger's professors back at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. When Bryan Kohberger earned a master's degree in criminal justice, it was at DeSales. Ramsland teaches forensic psychology and has written more than 50 books. According to the article, prosecutors are preparing to tell the jury, and I quote, "The pupil was ready to become the teacher. He'd kill and get away with it. He'd prove how smart he was. He would show how much he'd learned." The article also suggests that Dr. Ramsland and Kohberger stayed in touch after he left DeSales University and moved out west, that they emailed each other after the murders, and that Ramsland called Kohberger's mother after he was arrested. So what does Dr. Ramsland say about the story and all the details contained within it? Not quite. That's my summary. I'm joined now by my NewsNation colleague, Bryan Enton. Bryan, whenever there's a big Kohberger story that drops, people go bananas, the internet, lights on fire. But we've been burned on some of these before. So talk to me about how Dr. Ramsland is responding to Howard Bloom's report.
Yeah, actually, we really have to be careful with some of these reports as we get closer to the trial, because Dr. Ramsland is saying that most of what is in this new report is just flat out not true. Now, of course, Dr. Ramsland was Bryan Kohberger's professor in Pennsylvania when he got his bachelor's. She was his forensic psychology professor. When he got his master's, she was his behavioral criminology professor. But in terms of this whole love story and the fact that they have been in communication, she says, just flat out wrong. Let me read you a statement that we got from Dr. Ramsland that really sums some of this up. She says, "I had no email correspondence with Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU." So that right there, I mean, the article said she did. She says flat out no email correspondence with Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU. He has not been in touch with me since his arrest. I called his parents as a gesture of kindness, but I do not advise them about the case. I did not call them hours after the arrest, as Bloom claims. I have never talked to his sister about any book. That was something that came up in the article. I never mentioned Kierkegaard in my classes, another thing that came up in the article. I did not broker, which is a word that Bloom used, anything regarding a lawyer. I have not been invited by the Kohbergers to Idaho. I don't know where they'll be staying. I don't know who Bloom's source is or why he reports information for which he has no proof. So that's what she's saying. I think what stands out to me the most, Ashleigh, is she is flat out saying that she has had no email correspondence with Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU and has not been in touch with him since the arrest, which Bloom said literally the opposite in his article. So
obviously the next and natural question would be, Is Howard Bloom responding to Dr. Ramsland's very pointed statement?
Yes, I'm just going through my phone because he did tweet out today. Catherine Ramsland has issued a statement about my recent piece. He says she confirmed she reached out to BK's parents after arrest. She refutes that BK emailed her while at WSU, and then he says, "I apologize for that error." Again, that was a big part of the story. Catherine Ramsland states she didn't demand that BK parents get her approval before meeting PA lawyer. I never wrote that. Nevertheless, they did. There's a chapter on her student BK in her forthcoming book that we don't know. And then Catherine Ramsland states she never taught Kierkegaard in her class to BK. I never said she did. I think she missed the point of my reference. And then he says, I will stand by my hypothesis just as that, a theory. So what he's saying now is that really this is all just a theory that he has about what the motive is, not necessarily that he has any proof that this theory is actually true.
Eek. Boy, that's uncomfortable stuff. Well, we'll continue to watch, and obviously it'll all come out in the evidence, so we will know soon enough. There was a hearing. It was closed door, so clearly Bryan and I can't report on what it was, but I did ask some sources whether this was a plea hearing, possibility for a plea, and the source I have said absolutely 100% no. Bryan, thank you. Great news gathering. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Ash.
All right, coming up, folks, Mother's Day is just around the corner, and I have a question for you. How would Mom feel about getting a multi-million-dollar gift if it meant that you, that gift giver, were stuck behind bars? One Kentucky mom does not have to imagine this after her Lotto-winning son made a colossal, a mega, a Powerball mistake. That is next. You know, I don't think I'm any different than the next guy in that I buy lotto tickets, hoping for a chance to score big and sail in a dope yacht in the Med. So imagine my surprise when I learned about James Farthing's multi-million-dollar dream. Mr. Farthing purchased a $2 Powerball ticket that ended up being the biggest jackpot in Kentucky Lotto history, $167.3 million. After his mom told him that he'd won, he claimed the cash almost immediately. And like a good son, he said he'd split the winnings with that mom, Linda Grizzle. Here they are in happier times, hoisting that big, beautiful check in Kentucky. Linda was elated by the stroke of fortune, saying, quote, "It's going to be a good Mother's Day." But she may have been wishing she didn't jinx everything so soon, and here's why. After posing with that check right there, that was Monday, her son decided to celebrate by taking his girlfriend, Jacqueline Fightmaster, down to Florida for his first taste of the high life. Note her last name, Fightmaster, because that is key in what happened next. They arrived at the Trade Winds Resort in St. Petersburg and promptly went to the bar, where, according to a police report, an argument broke out and so did a fight. Cops say Mr. Farthing punched another patron right in the face, which is bad on its own, but it is especially bad if you're an ex-felon, previously convicted on multiple charges and on parole, which James Farthing is. When the sheriff's deputies arrived to break up the fight, they say Farthing went even further and kicked one of them in the face. As for Mr. Farthing's girlfriend, Jacqueline Fightmaster, cops say she lived up to her name, joining in the bar brawl, and they booked her for public intoxication. But James Farthing, he was taken in for felony battery on a law enforcement officer and 2 other misdemeanors. And bond was set at just $10,000. So no problem, right? Because he just won $167 million. Wrong. Since he's a convicted felon, that bar fight was a parole violation. So Mr. Farthing is stuck behind bars. As for his mom, who thought it was going to be the best Mother's Day ever, not unless she enjoys whatever the commissary and a postage stamp can send her way. You better apologize, bro, to that mom of yours. Coming up next, Gregory Moore has seen his fair share of courtrooms. As a divorce lawyer, you might say it's where he feels most at home. But Gregory Moore is not going to like the next courtroom he enters because he'll be wearing shackles and a jumpsuit as a defendant. And it's not for defrauding a client, it's for murdering one. But was he the shadowy figure behind the killing? And did he do it because he wasn't ready for his trial? A decade-old cold case is suddenly heating up. Next. A little earlier in the show, we talked about motives, right? But I want you to try this one on for size as a motive. I'm not ready for court. It is a lawyer's greatest fear, right? As a trial date approaches and he's hopelessly behind, that the judge will postpone the case for him. And when he doesn't, it's like, no. So the simple solution, kill your client, because that would do it. That would wipe the case off the books. And prosecutors in Cleveland think that that is exactly what Gregory Moore did, kill his client. Jumped out of the bushes, the proverbial bushes, chasing Aliza Sherman down the street, stabbing her to death on the sidewalk outside of his law office. Aliza was a respected nurse and a mom of 4. She had hired Gregory Moore as her divorce lawyer, and the trial was closing in. But on Palm Sunday 2013, she was murdered. And although police had some pretty strong suspicions, no one was arrested in her death. No one, for 12 years, 1 month, and 8 days. But just last Friday, that lawyer, Gregory Moore, divorce lawyer, he was arrested. They picked him up in Austin, Texas, and the indictment, it reads like a movie script. Allegedly, on the last day of Aliza Sherman's life, her divorce lawyer, Gregory Moore, texted her, "Come meet me at the office at 4:30 p.m. And remember, this was Palm Sunday, so nobody's around. Aliza's case was messy, and she really wanted it to end. Allegedly, her lawyer disconnected his cell phone from the cell network and did not reconnect it until after Aliza was dead. Police say that lawyer swiped his card key at the office building to give himself an alibi, but never went inside. They also say when he knew Aliza was waiting outside, either he or an unknown co-conspirator, attacked her, chasing her down and stabbing her 10 times. Yes, the arrest was a long time coming, but Moore was on the radar of investigators for years. In 2017, he pleaded guilty to lying about his whereabouts when Aliza was killed, and he served 6 months in jail for it. He also admitted to calling in bomb threats in 2012, also to force delays in clients' trials that maybe he wasn't ready for. He lost his law license over it all as well. Tonight he is charged with aggravated murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping. Music to the ears of people who love and miss Aliza Sherman. My next guest is among them. Maria Zoll was a friend of Aliza's for decades when they were nurses together, and she never stopped hoping for news of this arrest. Maria, thank you so much for being on with me. And, you know, I know it's been over a decade, but I'm very sorry that you have endured this loss, that your friend has endured, her family has endured her loss. What's your reaction to Gregory Moore's arrest?
Well, I was so happy, you know. We've been waiting for this for a very long time. And, you know, I wouldn't give up on getting her justice. And when we heard, it just, you know, I wasn't surprised it was him. Okay. I thought from the beginning he was involved. So I'm just very pleased. And I thank the BCI for doing a beautiful job. And they did a hardworking job. And they got it, you know, they got some... They did a good job, and they got good evidence against him. And I can't.
Well, let's talk about that evidence, because you said you weren't surprised all along for this decade plus that it was Gregory Moore. What was it about Gregory Moore that made you think her divorce lawyer was her murderer?
Well, my first clue was the morning after she got murdered, I had called the news station to ask them if they could thank the person who stayed with her till she died, and you know, stayed with her while she was suffering. And you know, so I called them, and I thought, after that, I thought, well, what the heck? Why isn't he making a statement? Let's face it, if you have a client that you're working with and they're murdered outside your office, aren't you going to get out there and say, oh my gosh, I'm just heartbroken? I can't believe this has happened to her, I mean, no statement. And to me, that was bizarre. And her husband made no statement. So, that was my first clue, was him. And then it proceeded, where they were talking, they gathered evidence, and he had not, they gathered evidence on how he tampered with evidence. He lied to the FBI. He texted her, and he wasn't there. And I'm thinking, how could he be getting away with this long? How could you?
Can I ask you? I want to ask you about the husband, because as I understand the story, Aliza was in such a bitter divorce, and Greg Moore is her lawyer. When someone's involved in a bitter divorce and they turn up dead, usually suspect number one is the husband. But then Greg Moore's charges include conspiracy. Is there any thought that there was a conspiracy between an ex-husband and a divorce lawyer? Is there any thought that the ex-husband had anything to do with this?
Well, that was our thought. I mean, I felt that maybe her husband and him were involved. I mean, I'm not going to accuse anyone, but that's, why would the lawyer just do this? I mean, I just find it hard to believe.
Maybe, I mean, I don't know if the motive for murder is I'm not ready for trial, so I'll just kill the client and get this off the docket. It just seems incredible. But, the ex-husband died, so it's not as though he can be brought to trial at this point. But do you know how Aliza's 4 kids feel about A, the arrest of Gregory Moore, and B, the suspicions that it might have been Aliza's husband, who might have been a co-conspirator?
Well, I have not talked with them where I could say how they feel right now. I'm sure they're going through a lot. I think everybody thought that her husband was involved, So that's not an uncommon thought. And it's been very difficult to think that, but it makes sense to everyone.
I mean, here we are 12 years later, and finally an arrest. Do you have any idea what took so long to make an arrest? Well,
yeah, I have a problem with the 12 years. The BCI got the case about 4 years ago, and they've worked very hard on it, and they've been able to get this arrest. I don't understand what happened the other years. From what I did hear a while ago is that Cleveland had refused help from the BCI all that time. So I don't know, I could only go by what I heard, but why the BCI wasn't allowed to help, I don't know. So I'm thanking them.
Well,
for doing a well done job.
I certainly am hoping for justice for Aliza, for you. She was such a dear friend of yours. And then for Aliza's children and other family and friends of hers. It's been a long time coming. We'll keep looking at the case and we'll pray for justice for you. Thank you so much for being here, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will get justice. We will get justice.
And we'll follow the story. We'll follow the story for sure.
Right.
And still to come on this program tonight, the NYPD finally learns what television and the internet and pretty much anybody who sells anything has known since the dawn of time. If you want to get people's attention, show them something that stands out. In this case, an attempted robbery suspect with at least 2 distinguishing features. Yeah, that's the wanted poster. Show and Tell is next. know, I've talked before about doing a whole show just on mugshots that we see, from the glam to the grotesque, and some night I may just do that. But every so often we come across a wanted poster that stands out just as well. And the one we found today really stands out. Believe me when I say that roughly half of New York was on the lookout for Lucy Laura during the last 6 days. She was on the loose after allegedly trying to steal an engagement ring from her brother's fiancé. The brother was allegedly in on it too. This poster of Lucy went viral, and I think we can say for obvious reasons. And to the person who commented, "Dopes, no one will be looking at her face," I will quote a subsequent comment, and that is "busted," because you knew that was coming, right? For what it's worth, the suspect reportedly wore a baggy sweatsuit in court and was released on her own recognizance. Her brother, also arrested, got supervised release. Their next hearing is July 1st, when the weather will be hotter, so who knows what she will choose to wear then. Just a reminder, if you are trying to figure out where we are on day one of picking a jury for Diddy, go to Drop Dead Serious, my podcast. I got a full primer there on how we got to day one, everything in the Diddy case. I also have a summary of day one and a summary of day 9 in the Karen Reed case, too. Cuomo starts next. I'll see you tomorrow.